Good morning.
Good morning.
We are starting today chapter 12. And in many ways, this is really where the Tanya starts. So the reason why I say that is because the Tanya, the book that we're learning, is called Sefer Shel Beinonim, the book of the intermediary, the book of the middle average person. Now, starting in chapter 1, the Alter Rebbe proved to us that the words that we think, tzaddik, wicked person, the tzaddik, the righteous person, Russia, the wicked person, and the Beinoni, the average person, which we sort of imagine is like a majority thing. The Alter Rebbe says that's technically true, on your judgment day, but on a halacha, on a Torah, especially Hasidic understanding, that's not what we're talking about. And then the Alter Rebbe spent a lot of chapters describing to us what our psyche is. What is our struggle, our day-to-day struggle when we want to serve God? What are the opposing forces? And the answer is, on one hand, we have our godly soul, a literal piece of God that is in us that wants to do one thing, connect to God. And we spent a few chapters describing what exactly that connection is. After that, we were introduced to our animal soul. Our animal soul wants to do one thing, fulfill its own desires. Not necessarily bad, not necessarily evil, but completely selfish. It wants to do what it wants to do.
And necessary.
Necessary, absolutely. It's not bad, it's not extra, it's just selfish. Why does it want to eat? Because it wants to live for its own selfish purposes. And then the Alter Rebbe described to us the battle that happens. Our life is considered is compared to a small city. And you have these two opposing forces, these two kings that want complete control over that small city, and they're battling it out. And that is our day-to-day life, where we are constantly drawn in the struggle between what our animal soul wants to do, selfish or even bad things, and what our godly soul wants to do, holy things. And you know what? Sometimes it might be they're fighting over the same item. They both want to eat breakfast. The question is, why am I eating breakfast? The godly soul wants to eat breakfast, so I have energy to go and pray, and I have energy to go and serve God. The animal soul wants to eat breakfast because that bagel and eggs looks really delicious, and it wants to have that. And that is that battle. And then starting in chapter 10, the Alter Rebbe gave us two options for the outcome of this battle. Chapter 10 described to us the outcome called the outcome of the tzaddik, the righteous person. And that is completely vanquished the animal soul. The animal soul is no longer there. It's completely routed, it's destroyed. Now, within chapter 10, the Alter Rebbe gave some gradations. There are some levels. Is it completely gone, or it just completely has no control and no power, as the Alter Rebbe discussed at length in chapter 10. However, we gave a disclaimer, that is not really the outcome that we should be expecting. What's more realistic for us? Chapter 11 introduced us to the outcome of the Russia. What we might think of a wicked person, the Alter Rebbe says the Russia's outcome is that the animal soul still has some power. As we gave the example, if there's a government trying to destroy a terrorist organization, if the terrorist organization has one foothold, it has one attack gets through, the country's not safe. The people are not safe. At the end of the day, the person who, even if it's just once in a while, and one tiny little avera, one tiny little sin, he gives in just one tiny little bit, the fact that the animal soul still has a foothold, still has the ability, means that ultimately the animal soul has some dominion, and therefore the person is called a Russia. And as Alter Rebbe said, that has a massive gradation. There's a Russia v'toivlei, the better version of a Russia, which means that yes, the animal soul sometimes wins, but it's very seldom, and he right away feels guilty, and he right away does tshuva. But at the end of the day, if the animal soul sometimes manages to win, that means that it has control.
And that may also have.
We're going to talk about that in this week's parsha, in this week's chapter. We're going to talk about the Beinoni. The other extreme of the Russia is someone who completely his godly soul is completely gone. Now, as we said, the difference between the animal soul and the godly soul is the godly soul can never truly, really be completely gone, because you're still a Jewish person, you're still a human person, that godly soul is still there. The thing is, it's so removed, it's like so abstract from the body that it's pretty much there in name only. Now, as the Alter Rebbe proved, you still have that there, it's still part of who you are, but it has absolutely no say. This person, and the way you can tell that his godly soul is completely gone is he doesn't even feel guilty. One thing about Jewish guilt is that the reason why we have it is because it's our godly soul saying, I don't want to live like this. Now, there's a gradation, as long as we feel that guilt, that's us feeling that godly soul. And again, guilt is not a motivator in Judaism. It's an outcome in Judaism. And as Rabbi is going to discuss in the end of the 20s, in a bunch of chapters, ultimately, the godly soul is, ultimately, if we're motivated by guilt, it's a problem, and we shouldn't let that be our motivator. And in fact, usually when guilt comes, it's a bad thing, not a good thing, as we'll discuss. But right now in chapter 12, the Rabbi is going to introduce us to a new outcome. And this is really the outcome that we should be striving to. Because all of us, I won't talk all of us, I'll talk about myself. The Russia sounds like our daily life. The Russia's outcome, which again, I'm not specifically not using the translation that we normally would, as a Russia's a bad person, a wicked person, because that's not what the meaning really is. The meaning of a Russia, according to Hasidus, according to Tanya, is someone who is animal soul, still has some power. To what extent? Depends on the person. Sometimes the Russia control the animal soul controls our entire day, and sometimes the animal soul controls one tiny moment of our day that we slip up and fall. But that still means we're a Russia. So what do we aim for? What is our goal? Our goal is to become a Beinoni. Our goal is to live the life of what till now we thought means the average person. Now we're going to see the Beinoni as someone who never, ever, ever slips up. The Beinoni is someone who they live their life as if they were a tzaddik. Their thought, speech, and action are completely pure. They never once slip up. That is what a Beinoni is. And we'll start inside on page number 2 with the chapter, and this is why in many sense, this is where the Tanya starts, because from here on out, the Alter Rebbe is going to start describing to us what the Beinoni is, and how do you be a Beinoni?
If that's a Beinoni, what's a tzaddik?
A tzaddik, so that's a good question. What is the difference between a Beinoni and a tzaddik? And I'll give away the answer. The answer is that a Beinoni still has the struggle. The Yetzer Hara, the evil, the animal soul, we'll call it, is still alive and well. And every single day, I still have the temptations to do wrong. But I never give in. Whereas the tzaddik has destroyed his Yetzer Hara, destroyed his evil inclination, it's no longer there. He no longer has those temptations. The Beinoni very, very much does. And as the Alter Rebbe will talk about in chapter 27, 28, for many of us, this is going to be our entire life. And it can be it can, in a certain sense, become depressing. I've been fighting the same battle for the last 30 years and I haven't made any progress. So if we're just thinking about ourselves, right, from our own perception of what we should be doing, it seems like we didn't make any progress. But the Alter Rebbe says, no. Every single day which you succeed is a huge day of progress. The fact that you haven't conquered, it's because you're not a tzaddik. As we described, a tzaddik is an outcome which many of us were not blessed with. That is a specific path, a specific life path that God chose certain people. They have the life of a tzaddik, and they can go read the book of tzaddikim to know what their life is about. We here, humans, we are going to be learning the book of the Beinoni. How do we survive in this daily struggle?
Can you be a Beinoni and be ignorant? Or do you have to be an educated person to be
That's a good question as well. Do you have to, can you be a Beinoni by default? Right? What if the Alter Rebbe is going to discuss it over the next chapters, the next couple of chapters, but you do have that idea that some people just are not very, they don't have a lot of desire. They don't have a lot of temptations. They're fine with a little bit, I don't know what word you want to use for it, but some people are very hot-blooded. They want everything. Their eyes are bigger than anything. Everything they see, they want to have. Some people are just not like that. It is possible to be a Beinoni by default, but there's a huge benefit, a huge, I'll say, there's something much more special about being a Beinoni by battle, not just by default, as the Alter Rebbe is going to continue to talk about. But
the other thing that comes to mind, it may not be related, but you're saying somebody's born as a tzaddik.
Yes.
So where's the free will?
That's a good question. Where is that free will? And the answer is a tzaddik still goes on his journey. A tzaddik is not necessarily born with the Yetzer Hara destroyed, with the animal soul destroyed. It can get to that point. It has its own process, and it has to go through that. And I'm not going to comment more on that because I don't know more than that. Because the tzaddik's journey is its own process, but ultimately the tzaddik's outcome is different. And over the next few chapters, we're going to go back. I don't know if anyone remembers, it was like 6 months ago. But in chapter 1, we asked a bunch of questions. One of the questions we asked was about that Job calls out to God and says, God, you created righteous people and you created wicked people. And we said, that's not true. The whole concept of free will is that we get to choose if we're righteous and wicked. But now we understand the answer. Certain people were born with the ability to be a tzaddik, with the ability to destroy completely their Yetzer Hara. Again, I'll talk for myself. I was not born that way. I'm a regular person, and my battle, my life mission is to keep my head above water and stay a Beinoni and avoid slipping down and becoming a Rasha. So, on page 2, beginning of chapter 12. The Beinoni, intermediate man, is he whom the evil of the animal soul never attains enough power to conquer the small city, i.e. the body, which is likened to a small city which the divine and animal soul both wish to dominate, as we discussed at length. So as to clothe itself in the body and make it sin. The animal soul is never strong enough to actually make the person sin. Dahainu, shalishleisha levushe nefesh abahamis shehin machshava dibur ma'isa shemitzad klipa. That is to say, the 3 garments of the animal soul, namely thought, speech, and action, originating in the klipa, i.e. forbidden thought, speech, and action, which derive their vitality from klipa, as explained in previous chapters, are in the Beinoni so subdued that they ein gevrim by al nefesh. They do not prevail within the divine soul to the extent of clothing themselves in the body. And we're using a lot of terminology that many of us weren't there when we learned about them. And even if we were, it was a long time ago. We discussed how we have 3 garments, which means 3 ways of expressing ourselves, 3 ways of interacting with the world around us. They're not who we are, they are what we do. They're our thoughts, our speech, and our action. We are ourselves. We are what we're called the 10 levushim, the 10 attributes, the 10 midos. They are more who we are, what we feel, our emotions in the current moment. That is a lot more who we are.
The Sephirot, is that what you're talking about?
So the Sephiros are when we talk about God on the godly side. Right? When it's us, it's called the midos, the attributes, sort of the emotions that we have, love, fear, etc. Those are more who we are. Even they're not really who we are, but they're a lot more closer related to who we are. But here we're talking about the 3 garments. Just like we have a choice what shirt to put on in the morning, we have a choice what actions we're going to do, what speech we're going to talk, and what thoughts we're going to think, as we described at length before. So the animal soul is never strong enough to actually change the garments that we're wearing. We never actually think the thoughts of the animal soul. We never actually speak the speeches of the animal soul, and we never actually do the deeds that the animal soul wants us to do. But neither in the brain, right? The animal soul never has control in the brain that we think forbidden thoughts with the animal soul's garment of thought, nor in the mouth that speak forbidden words with the garment of speech, nor in any of the other 248 organs in the act of forbidden matter, the garment of action. In none of these do the garments of the animal soul clothe themselves to cause them to sin and defile, God forbid, in which case would be a Rasha, right? Because the moment we sin, the moment we slip up, the moment the animal soul is in control, we're a Rasha. So by a Beinoni, by definition, means he's 100% in control of his thought, speech, and action. So what is control? What are the 3 garments that the Beinoni is constantly wearing? On page 3, Rak shleisha levushay nefesh alikis heim levadam mislabsham beguf shehem machshava dibur ma'isa shel tiag mitzvah satera. Only the 3 garments of the divine soul, they alone manifest themselves in the body, these being the thought, speech, and action related to 613 commandments of the Torah. Every single thought, speech, and action is in line with what the godly soul wants. Now, as we described at length, the idea is that sometimes not everything we do is actually a mitzvah. Drinking this coffee, there's no mitzvah that says I have to drink coffee. So how can this coffee be an action of the godly soul? Well, what am I doing it for? I'm doing it so I have the energy, so I can talk for a while. I'm doing it because it helps me learn Torah. I'm doing it because it's to add in mitzvos. Then it is the action of a godly soul. If I'm just drinking it because I really like coffee, that's not bad. That's not wicked. That's not evil. Right? If this was a wrong deed, if this was a non-kosher cup of coffee, then it's definitely the action of the animal soul. But even if it's kosher, it depends why I'm drinking it. That's where intention really matters. Am I drinking it because the godly soul knows that in order to be able to teach Torah, in order to be able to not fall asleep on the way home, in order for all of these things, I need to have coffee? That's why I'm drinking it. Then it's a godly soul. If I'm drinking it because it's I like it because I want it, well then it's not necessarily wicked, but it's still the expression of the animal soul. It's a selfish action. So when we think about the Beinoni, we think about the level that the Beinoni has attained. Never in his life does he do anything selfishly. Never in his life does he do anything as an expression of the animal soul. Now, here's an very important caveat. When I use the words never in his life, this morning I did something wrong. Not actually, I'm giving an example. Does that mean I'm forever gone from being a Beinoni? Does that mean I'm forever trapped in the realm of a Rasha? Especially when we read the next few words of the Tanya, this question become really strong. V'lo avar aveder miyamav v'lo yaver lo'elam. The Beinoni has never committed any transgression, nor will he ever transgress. The name Rasha has never been applied to him. However, temporarily, not even for a moment throughout his life. So first let's explain what the Alter Rebbe is saying. The Alter Rebbe is saying that the idea of a Rasha means that the animal soul has some control. Which means even if it was 10 years ago, the fact is, I lost some ground, I did an action that the animal soul wanted me to do, and so I was a Rasha in that moment. A Beinoni means he never sinned and never will sin. However, and this is that long paragraph in the bottom of the page, the Rebbe explains that we're not talking about factually, because I can't control the past, and the future is unknown. So how can I ever know if I'm a Beinoni right now? What we're talking about is the current state of mind. The way I am right now, I am in so much control over my body, over my thought, speech, and actions. It's as if in my current state of mind, right, if I was the way I am right now, 2 hours ago, I wouldn't have done that sin. If I can maintain this, I will never sin. We are human, and things change, and our inspiration ebbs and flows, and stuff happens. So really, the decision to be a Beinoni is really a moment-to-moment idea. How in control am I right now? Right now, in this present moment, I'm fully in control over myself. I, meaning my godly soul, is 100% in charge. I'm a Beinoni. This morning, I can't control that. What might happen tonight, I can't control that either. But in this present moment, I am in so control that if I would have been in this state of mind this morning, I would have never sinned. If I can maintain this state of mind through the evening, I will never sin.
It's still not clear to me. The second sentence paragraph, the Beinoni has never committed any transgression.
Right. So the Rebbe explains at length. We're talking about in the state he is right now, he would have never have done that. We're not talking, the Alter Rebbe is not talking, because later on the Alter Rebbe is going to talk about how we can fight to become a Beinoni. Based on what the Alter Rebbe says here, it seems like once you mess up once, sorry, try again next life. Right? But that's obviously not the case, as we'll continue to see from this chapter, and we'll continue to see in future chapters. So the Rebbe, and this is this long thing on the bottom of the page, which I'm not going to read inside, but the idea that the Rebbe explains, what we're referring to here is his current state of mind. Based on his current state of mind, he would have never done that sin. This morning, he was in that state of mind, so he did sin. But he did tshuva, he moved on from that, and now he's fully in control. So based on his current state of mind, he would have never sinned, and he will never sin. What happened in the past, you can't control. What will happen in the future, we cannot know. But based on his current state of mind, right now, he's a Beinoni. And because of that, it really, we start to recognize that not to take away from the immense control that a Beinoni needs, because a Beinoni really is a high level that we can spend an entire lifetime aspiring towards. But what we're aspiring toward is to make more and more of our day Beinoni status. To fight that more and more of my life should be under that, I should have the title of Beinoni.
So if you only have one moment of being a Beinoni, you're a Beinoni for your whole life?
No. Because then the question that Jacob asked was, once I'm a Beinoni for one moment, does that mean I have that status? No. That would be tzaddik. Once I've achieved the level of tzaddik, I've conquered, I've won, and I'm done. The whole idea of a Beinoni is I haven't won. And therefore, what the Beinoni is doing is constantly struggling to keep his head above water, to not slip down into Russia land, to stay in the Beinoni status, to not actually act on any of his temptations. And it's a struggle. And you know what? Sometimes the Beinoni might slip up and temporarily becomes a Russia, but he has to fight out of that. And he has to go rejuvenate, recalibrate, and say, the Yiddish expression is, wish up and geh weiter. When we slip up, when we make a mistake, so as we'll continue to discuss, we can get so, oh my goodness, what did I do? How could I have done that? We can get so caught up in the mistakes that we did that it ruins the rest of our day also, because that's what we're focusing on. The Yiddish expression is, we brush ourselves off and move on. That's the only way, because you lost one moment, all right? You weren't a Beinoni last hour. Try again. Now we can do that again, and you know what? You might have an hour of being Beinoni. And we're not talking about sort of like tricking ourselves, because this is a reality of our state, right? The idea that we can always think to ourselves, right? I'm going to use a very human example, because using mitzvos and averos, suddenly someone who decides that they know that gluten is not good for them, and they want to stay off of gluten. Now, every moment they really, really like gluten. It hurts their stomach, and so they know they should stay off of it. So there's the idea that there's that constant battle of, I want that piece of cake. I'm not going to have it. I'm not even going to think about it. I'm not going to talk about it, but I always want it. Now, this morning I slipped up, and with my coffee, I had a bite of a Danish. I messed up.
Only a bite?
This person, not me, me, don't worry. But that person who struggled, that person who's constantly fighting to not have it, and I'm specifically using a very, human example, because I feel like this is something we can relate to more, right? At the moment when he's fully in control, based on I am right now, I'm completely cognizant of the problems with having gluten. I'm completely cognizant of what it's going to do to me. Based on my current mental state, I'll never have it again.
Let me offer a different, another comparable example. There's a store in Southwest Reno called Crumble that serves the greatest cookies I've ever tasted. They're a big temptation for me. I've decided in my own mind that I'm going to budget myself. I'm only going to have one once a month. So that's my compromise. So does that still, can I still put myself?
The difference that I'll say there is that there's no such thing as compromising with the animal soul. The godly soul and the animal soul cannot compromise. There is no because, and the reason why is because it's a battle for every inch. And if you give the animal soul an inch, it'll take a foot, and it has a foothold. Right? We don't negotiate with terrorists. We don't negotiate with the animal soul. That's not an option, because if we're in the moment we're negotiating, and I think that's a great example of someone who, even though right now he's not sinning, he still might be in the level of Russia, because right now the only reason he's not sinning is because he knows that tonight he'll be able to sin. That's not a Beinoni. The fact that someone is sleeping and therefore he's not sinning doesn't make him a Beinoni. We're talking about a state of mind that, based on his current state of mind, he would have never sinned and he will never sin. The moment we're compromising, the moment I'm pushing off, I'm able to survive a whole month without gossiping, because I know that I'm going to meet up with my friend and he's the best gossip ever, and I'll have an hour of the best gossip ever. That's not really winning over, because I'm just delaying it. I'm just sort of pushing it off. Here we're talking about that based on the way the Beinoni is right now, he would have never sinned and he will never sin. What will actually happen? Who knows?
Not enough. You're drinking coffee, sir, if I can make it personal.
Sure.
Maybe you're having sugar in the coffee, okay? So sugar's not good for you.
Yeah.
I mean, you need a little bit of sugar, but
yeah.
You've got to limit it. So to have some sugar, a little bit every day, why can't that be a compromise?
That's a great compromise. And with our health, we do that constantly, but we're not talking about our health. And that's why we have to be careful when we start using analogies, because we can start getting in the wrong direction. When we're talking about our health, we're talking about someone who's trying to wean themselves off of something, right? A smoker trying to completely. So some people, they're successfully go cold turkey. For many people, they have to compromise with themselves and say, I'm going to slow me down to 1 pack a day, to half a pack a day, right? Some people have to really, but that's not, here we're talking about a zero-sum game. When we're talking about the godly soul, it's great. If that's where I'm holding right now, to be better than I was yesterday is, of course, an improvement. To rise up the ranks within Russia, within how much my animal soul controls, it's better. But here we're talking about a Beinoni. A Beinoni is someone who, without compromise, the animal soul has zero actual dominion, zero actual control. It's there, it's tempting, it wants it, and that's why sort of I use specific example of a gluten intolerance, where every time someone who's gluten intolerant has some gluten, it's a huge mistake. Now, in order to get to there, in order to really be able to fight their way, they have to go through whatever process. Right, and that's sort of where the analogy starts to fall away, and I want to move on from this point specifically because we're going to it's a long chapter, and I would very much like to finish it today. But yes,
It seems like what you're really saying is it's a question of determination, presence of mind, and having a clear focus of what your intention and purpose is.
absolutely, and we're going to continue to describe that at length. How do you get to that point? Right now we're just describing what the Beinoni is. The Beinoni is someone who in thought, speech, and action, the animal soul is completely out of the picture. The godly soul is completely in control. However, why are they only a Beinoni? If someone is completely in control, there's no compromise, they never fall through. Continuing on page 4. Ach mehus v'atmos nefesh elikis shehein eser b'chineiseha. However, the essence and being of the divine soul, which is its 10 faculties, which just in the parentheses it says the 3 intellectual faculties, the 7 emotional faculties. They do not hold undisputed sovereignty and sway over the small city. Ultimately, the animal soul's desires are there as well. The temptations, the will, the animal soul is as well. What the godly soul is fully in control of what the animal soul is in control of is just what the godly soul is in control of is just the action. Except there are some moments, because he's a Beinoni. I'm sorry?
Just only control of the action?
Action, speech, and thought.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, all 3.
okay.
Those are called the 3 garments. Those are the 3 things you do, or you think, or you speak, as opposed to who you are, what you feel, and what you know. And that's sort of a distinction that we made much earlier in Tanya at length. But for right now, the Beinoni, there is a moment of every single day when the Beinoni doesn't even feel the temptations. There is a moment that the Beinoni is fully calibrated. And in fact, because the Beinoni goes through this, that's how throughout the rest of the day, he's able to have control. When is that moment that the Beinoni is fully calibrated? That even, the 10 faculties, he only feels the godly faculties. That is, continuing on page 5, only at specific times do the faculties of the divine soul hold undisputed sovereignty over the Beinoni, with the animal soul having no effect whatsoever on him, such as during the recital of the Shema or the Amidah. When the Beinoni is praying, during those moments, specifically during the moments of Shema or the Amidah, Shmona Esrei, during those moments, he's only feeling godly emotions. He's only feeling the godly soul.
And that's something you have to do, though.
Yes, absolutely. You have to get to there, you have to work on it, and the Alter Rebbe discussed later in Tanya how there sometimes is a problem. That sometimes, if you really, really struggle during davening, if the Yetzer Hara, if the animal soul is really putting up a fight, you're trying to focus, and you can't get a word out without some distracting thought in your mind, take that as a compliment. It means the animal soul knows it's about to lose, it knows it's about to lose you for today, and so it's trying to disrupt this idea. Because a Beinoni, during the time of davening, he's fully calibrated. He is fully only feeling the emotions of the godly soul. Shehishas meichin de gadlus l'mayla. For this time of prayer is a supernal intellect above and is in a sublime state, i.e., it is a time of great illumination of the higher world. when we pray, we might think that we're just sitting down here saying physical words, which we are. But what we're accomplishing and what we're doing is up above. There are incredible things happening. It's a spiritual moment. All the angels are pausing to listen to our prayer. There's a lot going on upstairs that we're not aware of. Because of that, when the Beinoni is praying, everything is fully calibrated. Likewise, below in this physical world, the time of prayer is a propitious time for every propitious, I think. What? Propitious, thank you, for every man to ascend to the higher spiritual levels. No worries. Then during the cycle of Shema, or during prayer, the Beinoni binds his Chabad, his intellectual faculties, consistent of Chachma bin Adas. This is a lot of talking about the process of prayer. I'm going to read through the page and then we'll talk about it outside. Meditating deeply on the greatness of the blessed Ein Sof, arousing through the meditation of a burning love of God in the right part of his heart. For his explained the previous chapter, the God's greatness arousing the love of within his heart. Then this love in turn leads the Beinoni to desire to cleave to him by means of fulfilling the Torah and its commandments out of love. When we pray, what are we doing? Right? The prayer book is quite long. There's a lot of words. What are we really doing? What are we supposed to be doing? While we're praying, it's a moment where the words we're saying and the ideas that we're talking about are supposed to inspire us. We're supposed to think about them, and that in turn is supposed to inspire us. Let's take the Shema. The first line of the Shema, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. That's a sentence we say 5 times a day. If we think about it, even just one of those times, if we really let that sink in, God, our God, not some abstract idea. This is the same God that a few pages ago we were talking about how God gives us what we need and all of those things. God that we relate to. This God, our God, is one. One doesn't just mean he's one out of, God doesn't mean, one doesn't mean 1 out of 100. One means he is the complete unity. Meaning everything in the world is part of God. Everything we experience, everything that we have, everything that we want, everything is part of godliness. Think about that if we let that sink in, if we really can relate to that, which I'm saying that in one word, this is a lifetime of meditation to really let that permeate us. That should inspire us to a level of connection, to want so much, to really want, and you know what we say the next line? Well, the next line is, we spoke about God, so we say, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Adon Vad. Blessed be his name. And what do we continue next? The paragraph called V'ahavta, which tells us that this great God, how do we connect to him? V'ahavta, we have to love him, b'chol levavcha, with all of our heart, b'chol nafshecha, with all of our soul. And going on through that entire paragraph. Just that section, the first line of the Shema, and the paragraph that we say about how much we want to connect and love and the extent of our connection. And how do we do it? By thinking about it, by talking, by learning Torah, by saying the Shema twice. All of those things, those should inspire us. Those should shake us to our core and want to make us change our lives. The Beinoni, because while he's praying, he's completely calibrated, he's having these meditations, it's completely successful. So during the moment of prayer, the godly soul is 100% in charge on every level. And that also in turn inspires him that even when he closes the prayer book, which as we'll discuss in a moment, the moment he closes the prayer book, the moment's over. Suddenly the animal soul is back with a vengeance. However, because he has calibrated this morning, because that gives him the willpower to conquer the rest of the day. As Stephanie said, what is it all about? It's all about mind over matter. And not in the jokey way that I don't mind so it doesn't matter, but in the real way. That my mind is completely in control over everything else. That's what makes us human. We described this in the past. There's a reason why humans walk on 2 feet and animals walk on 4 feet. Animals that walk on 4 feet, their brains are equal to their hearts. They're on the same level. In fact, many times the head has to bend down to eat, so the head is actually lower. Humans, we're upright. Our head is above our heart. symbolically meaning our mind can always control our emotion. There is no such answer in Judaism, I couldn't resist. Of course you could. You're a human. You have free choice. You could always, it might be very, very hard. And that's sort of the idea that we're going to discuss through the end of the chapter. But the important thing to remember about the Beinoni is that there is a moment of perfect calibration. During the time of prayer, that is when the Beinoni really feels like a tzaddik. The animal soul is nowhere to be found. Continuing on page 6. This arousal of love for God and its accompanying resolve to adhere to Torah mitzvahs is thereby to cleave to Him is the essential subject of the Shema, which is the biblical deraisa commandment enjoins us to recite. The Torah tells us in the Shema itself, we read, you have to recite the Shema twice a day. And we don't just recite the Shema, there's also the blessings. Before we recite the Shema, there are blessings that we bless God for the opportunity, and we thank God for the opportunity to say the Shema. Likewise, the rabbinically ordained blessings preceding and following the Shema are preparation enabling us to fulfill, which we recite the Shema, as explained elsewhere. There's a very long footnote explaining this idea, footnote number 1, but for now we'll leave it at that. The moments of when we say the blessings, and then we actually say the Shema, and the Beinoni experiences that moment of complete calibration, of complete sovereignty of the godly soul. As he finishes off on the bottom of page 6, the Uz harash b'chol asmali kafuf v'batul otev milispashit b'chol yamani mechach mubinadas shabameich musharim b'gdulas ein seif baruch hu. At such time, during the Shema or prayer, when the love of God burns in the heart of the Beinoni, the evil in the left part of his heart, which, as we explained at length, the animal soul's principal area of manifestation, is subjugated to and nullified before the goodness, the love of God that spreads into the right part of the heart where the divine soul is manifest from the Chabad faculties in the brain, which are bound in meditation to the greatness of Ein Sof. In summary, while the Beinoni is praying, while the Beinoni is in the middle of reciting the Shema, his mind, even his thoughts and emotions, are 100% pure. They are 100%, the animal soul is nowhere to be found. Because it's such a powerful moment of connection that there's just no possibility for the animal soul to come in. Because again, it's either or. And when the godly soul is so strong and so much feeling that connection, the animal soul has no hope. Now what differentiates the Beinoni and the Tzaddik is what happens the moment after prayer. What happens the moment the Beinoni closes his prayer book? So for the Tzaddik, because he actually conquered the animal soul, because the animal soul actually doesn't exist, even when he closes his siddur, he continues in that same path. He still doesn't feel any of the emotions or intellect of the animal soul. But the Beinoni does. Continuing on page 7.
Why only twice a day?
Why only twice a day? Why is that the command? So on a very technical level, the reason is because we start off our day and we end off our day with this calibration. We start off with the Shema is supposed to be said when we get up and when we go to sleep. It's the first thing we do and the last thing we do.
We don't need a boost in the middle of the day?
We do. That's called mincha.
Okay.
And if you need even more boost, it's always a good idea. If we're feeling a struggle, feeling a slip, take out a siddur. As the Alter Rebbe continues to us, what do we do if in the middle of the day we're struggling? Take out a Tehillim. Take out a Torah book. Do something, add some spirituality, because when the godly soul is actively connecting, actively calibrating, that's how we conquer. That's how we overpower.
Thank you.
Continue on page 7. Avar acher hatfila behistalkus hamechen de gadlus ein seif baruchum harei hara chayze v'nir b'chol hasmali u'misayvel l'tayvus elam haza v'tainugav. But this state of affairs only lasts for the duration of the spiritually charged time of prayer. However, after the prayer, when the state of sublimity of the intellect of Ein Sof, blessed is he, departs, i.e., when the spiritual illumination engendered by the prayer ceases, the evil of the animal soul in the left part of the heart reawakens, and he, the Beinoni, once again feels the desires for the lust of this world and its delights, since the evil of the Beinoni's animal soul remains undiminished even after prayer, as the Alter will explain. Right? The Beinoni will close his siddur, and the first thought that will come to his mind is, wow, I'm really hungry. I hope we're having bagels and lox for breakfast.
How did you know that?
This is our life, right? This is because why is it like that? And Beinoni can think to himself, what am I? There can only be like a certain cognitive dissonance of Does that mean my whole prayer, when I was so connected and I was so inspired and I felt like I could go and conquer the world and I'll never have another temptation again? Where did that go? And the answer is, that inspiration was real. But the way you were able to feel that is because the animal soul went to sleep for an hour while you prayed. But now it's awake and it's hungry. Now, here's an important point. The temptation is back. So why don't I give in? After prayer, someone closes their prayer book and says, wow, I really want to go and rob a bank. Why doesn't it? Why doesn't he? Right? And again, I'm using a very non-personal example because when we start getting into really specific temptations that we all have, it starts to get offensive. But why, if the Beinoni was so inspired and so committed to only doing good and positive things, he closes his siddur and says, wow, I could really go rob a bank now. Why doesn't he? Because there's one important factor. The animal soul is not in charge. The godly soul is in charge. He feels the animal soul. He's tempted by the animal soul, but it's not in charge. As the Alter Rebbe continues,
Maybe he's afraid of punishment, and that's the only reason he does it.
If the reason why he's afraid of punishment is the reason that the Alter Rebbe is going to discuss, does the feeling that he feels of control over, is it real or is it only temporary? Because if he would really feel, that right now, if he wasn't afraid of punishment, if he knew he can get away with it, would he sin?
Most people wouldn't.
Right. Most people would. Right. So then that's a different question. If the only reason why he's not doing it is he's afraid of punishment, you have to sort of calibrate, okay, so then it's really still his animal soul. It's his animal soul is making a calculation that it's not worth it. Here we're talking about that although he has a temptation, he controls himself. Yet, because the evil of the animal soul has not the sole authority and dominion over the city, for the good of the divine soul situated in the brain has its say as well. It is unable to implement this desire by clothing itself in limbs of the body. Indeed, speech or actual thought. Actual thought means to concentrate his attention to worldly pleasures with view of devising means of satisfying the lust of his heart. The animal soul is not in control. Who's actually in control? The godly soul. And therefore, as much as he closes his siddur and feels the temptation, he'll never actually do it. Because he's still a Beinoni. He's still a Beinoni that his thought, speech, and action are in control of his godly soul. The Alter Rebbe says, this is where we get to a point. What does it mean, thoughts of the animal soul? Right? What is the animal soul's thoughts? So the moment we transition from wanting something to thinking about it, that is already giving in on an intellectual level. If I want to rob the Bank of England, and in my mind I start planning about, all right, who do I have to hire, and how do I get there, and what do I do? Once I start planning it, I'm already ceding ground. I'm already in control, because my mind is already there. My mind is already doing the process, even if it's not a sin. Because again, it's not about sin and not sin. It's not about doing right and wrong. It's about who is in control. And the moment, and this is sort of going back to what we were talking about with David earlier. The moment, if I'm on a diet, if I'm avoiding gluten, it's completely okay for me to sit and think about, what would I have now? Sometimes it helps us get through it. I know on a fast day, on days that we fast on the calendar, sometimes as it gets to the end of the day, it's very helpful to start imagining, what am I going to have tonight after the fast is over? In the battle between the animal soul and the godly soul, that is already ceding ground. You might think, what's the harm? I'm just thinking. But you're giving control of your mental faculties, of your thoughts, to the animal soul. And that is already a problem. Because once the animal soul is in control of your thoughts, it means you're no longer a Beinoni, and you've slipped down to being a Rasha.
And you can tell it's not a good strategy because you feel more hungry.
Yes. And that's sort of where it starts to happen. That it might be, for some people it works, for some people it doesn't. For some people, the more you dwell on it, and that's why a major factor of the Beinoni is that the Beinoni can constantly be lusting. What did Jimmy Carter say? I lusted in my heart. That's okay. That's normal. That's human. The question is, then what? I lusted in my heart, and therefore what? The Tanya's answer is, push it away with both your hands. Don't even think about it. Because even just a thought about, I can't believe I'm lusting and that's already giving in, that's already entertaining the thought. And it's already a problem.
You said lusting in the heart is okay, but you're saying it's not okay. You shouldn't.
Because there's two stages. There's that lust coming into my heart, but then what? Do I push it away, or do I dwell on it? The fact that, I'm not going to say it's okay as in like it's a good thing. It's not a good thing. It means that the animal soul is tempting me. But the animal soul can tempt from today to tomorrow. It's my choice whether to give in to that temptation in thought, speech, and action. Continuing on page 8. Ki b'moyach shalat al halev. These are the most powerful words of Tanya. This is, if I had to sum up the words of the Tanya, the idea of the Tanya, the lesson of the Tanya for us in 3 words, it's moyach shalat al halev. Forward. The mind, the brain rules over the heart, as it's written in Rabbi by virtue of its innately created nature.
So you're saying intellect rules emotions?
Yes.
Is what you're saying?
Say that again.
Intellect rules emotion. Our thoughts always have the power to control our actions. It might be very hard. It's not saying it's easy, but we as humans were created that our mind controls our emotions. Most of us, at some point, cede that control and we let our emotions run our life. But our mind always has that ability. If we really, really wanted to, we could control our heart. They say the story of one of these students of the Alter Rebbe, who during the Napoleonic Wars between Russia and Napoleon, the Alter Rebbe, for reasons we're not going to discuss now, was very, very, very strongly on the side of the Russian government. In fact, he even sent his students to assist with the war effort. One of his students, who knew French and knew Russian, managed to infiltrate and become a translator for some of the top brass in the Napoleonic army. At one moment, Napoleon rushes into the meeting room. He sees this unfamiliar translator. He walks over and says, "You're a spy," and puts his hand over his heart. A very rudimentary version of a lie detector test. Because if the heart starts racing, he knows that the guy got worried. The chassid, the student's heart, stayed completely calm, and Napoleon said, "Oh, you're good." Later on, he said, what gave him that ability? Mind over matter. My heart racing, that fear, that's an emotion. If we are fully in control, he said that the Tanya had given him that power. I mean, you even see that today. There are tricks. If anyone has to take a lie detector test, which I'm not going to get into not going to get into the whole debate about whether or not they're actually accurate. But you can control yourself. You can control your breathing. You can regulate yourself because mind over matter, mind over emotion. Now, most of us aren't at that level yet, and the Alter Rebbe's disciple was obviously on a level where his mind physically controlled his body. But the idea that our mind is innately supposed to be in charge of our emotion is born into us, as the Alter Rebbe continues on page 8.
Blood pressure is a typical example. If you sit, relax, calm yourself,
absolutely
lower your blood pressure.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the emotional side of us, the stress, and I experience it on a daily basis. I have a toddler. I have 2 toddlers now, and they're so hard to regulate. But if you just can get their mind to be in control, you stop their bodies from running, and you sit and you do deep breaths with them, and you calm them down. That's their brain regaining control. Now, most of us have graduated beyond that point, so we don't lose control to that extent. But giving into the temptations of our emotions, when mentally we know we're not supposed to do this, is our heart's getting control over our mind. And we as humans have an innate and inborn ability for our heart, for our minds to control our body. Moyach shalat al halev. Continuing on page 8, Shekach Neitzer, in the second paragraph, Shekach Neitzer ha'adam b'tzil deisei, Shekol ha'adam yachol b'rtzeni b'meichei, for man was so created from birth that every person may, with the power of the will in his brain, i.e. the will created with his mind's understanding, restrain himself and control the drive of his heart's lust. Preventing the heart's desires from finding expression in deed, word, and thought, when the mind understands the evil inherent in such deed, word, or thought. And he can, if his mind wills it, divert his attention completely from that which his heart craves and turn his attention to the exact opposite direction. You can think about something else. And thought is where it's hardest for us to relate to this. Because of course, I know that I can physically control my body, even my speech. I can just shut up and not talk. But our thought is where we feel like we lose this control. But the Alter Rebbe reminds us, to have a thought is in our control. To choose to have a temptation may be beyond our control. But to turn that temptation into actually thinking about it, or maybe, or even just thought, we can have that choice. Especially if we don't just divert our thought to something neutral, but instead of thinking about something bad, we think about holiness. Because the exact opposite of wickedness, of temptation, is holiness. So someone's really struggling, someone's mind is going to some dark places. I don't mean dark places in just as in thoughts like, I want to rob the bank. Even thoughts of, I'm a bad person, I'm so bad, I'm a horrible. All of those depressing thoughts, all we have to do, and I'm saying all we have to do as if it's easy. It's not easy, but it's a simple solution. Think about something else, especially thinking about something holy. Continuing on the last line of page 8. Ubefrat el tzad kedusha. This is true, whatever his motives. It is true particularly in the direction. If this is true, whatever his motives, it's true particularly in the direction of holiness. If you think about holiness, then our mind, we can very easily regain control of our mind. Why? Because holiness is light. Torah, spirituality, thinking about God, thinking about positive, not just in like good stuff, but in holy things, is light. And when you light a light in a room, it doesn't become a battle of the light has to start fighting the darkness, and it's a whole battle that the light wins. By default, once there's light, darkness evaporates. And so by default, if I'm having dark thoughts, if I light a light in my mind, if I think about something holy, the darkness evaporates automatically. This is expressed, King Solomon said a very interesting line. This is on page 9, I'm sorry. Thus it is written, then I saw that wisdom surpasses folly as light surpasses darkness. Now, all the commentaries ask on that. I don't need to be King Solomon to realize that light is better than darkness. What exactly is the whole idea here? That wisdom is better than... What is the whole idea here? That not just that wisdom is better than folly. I don't need to be King Solomon to understand that. And I also don't need an analogy. Right? Analogies are helpful when we're struggling to understand something. We have an analogy. We don't need an analogy. We don't need a parable to understand that being smart is better than being stupid. What's he saying? He's saying that when we're talking about light and dark, they don't have to fight it out. By default, you turn on a light, the darkness automatically dissipates. A smartness, holiness, as soon as it comes, the darkness automatically dissipates. If I'm struggling with dark thoughts, if I'm struggling throughout the day, all I have to do is think spiritual thoughts. Tear my mind out of the gutter, out of the darkness, to something holy, and the thoughts will automatically run away. There's a famous saying, if this disgusting, lowlife tries to tempt you, meaning the evil inclination, mashchehu lebeis hamedrash, pull him to the study hall. If our evil inclination starts to fight us and tries to get control, drag him to your nearest holy book. Drag him to a siddur, drag him to the Tehillim, drag him to a Tanya, drag him to anything. Start thinking thoughts of Torah, thoughts of God, thoughts of prayer, and automatically it disappears. On the bottom of page 9, Perush. This analogy means that just as light has superiority, power, and dominion over the darkness, page 10. So that a little physical light banishes a great deal of darkness, which is displaced automatically and inevitably without any effort on the part of the light. It just happens automatically. So it is there driven away. So is there driven away automatically much foolishness of the klippa and sitra achra of the animal soul located in the left part of the heart. As indeed our sages say, a man does not sin unless the spirit of folly enters him. We're going to discuss this at length later. But sinning, bad thoughts are called the spirit of folly, are called stupidity, silliness. Why? We'll explain later at length. But essentially, the idea that it's okay to have these thoughts, we only have them. We can only convince ourselves to do something wrong by fooling ourselves. Bad thoughts are foolish thoughts. And just like a smart guy walks in and hopefully, light automatically dispels darkness, a little bit of truth dispels a lot of lies. Unfortunately, the lies can multiply a lot faster than the truth can, and that's its own separate problem. But within our minds, one light bulb of wisdom, of holiness, automatically dispels all of the darkness, all of the foolishness. Thus, our faith of the animal soul is folly. Hence, they are automatically banished by the wisdom of the divine soul that is in the brain. Which desires, what is the desires of the godly soul? Which desires to rule alone over the city and to pervade the entire body by means of the aforementioned three garments. Namely, thought, speech, and action connected with the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah as discussed above. The Beinoni, even while he's struggling, prayer, there's no struggle. Prayer, he feels like a tzaddik. But now prayer is over. He's back in the regular rat race of life. And the temptations are back, the desires are back, and he's struggling again. He's struggling, but he succeeds. How does he succeed? By as soon as the temptation comes, he diverts his attention from it, especially if he diverts it to something holy. Change your mind, just like you can change out of a dirty shirt, you can change out of a bad thought. You can change out of a dark thought, you can divert. Now, again, I'm not saying this is easy, but it's simple. And those are two very different things.
It also depends on who you spend your time with. If you surround yourself with
Absolutely.
people.
Absolutely. The more we are supposed to enable ourselves to get to this level, and we gain the abilities we gain. And the worst thing about negative people is they drag us with them, right? And that's why migrating from thought to speech makes it more real. It might be harder to change our thoughts, but once we say it out loud, it becomes more real, and it becomes, especially if we hear it from somewhere else. It absolutely. This is, again, it's simple, not necessarily easy. Now the Alter Rebbe is going to explain now. This is the difference between a Beinoni and a Tzaddik. Jacob's not here now to hear the completion of his answer, but this is the difference between a Beinoni and a Tzaddik. Continuing on page 11. Nevertheless, he is not deemed a tzaddik at all. For this dominance, that the light of the divine soul has over the darkness and folly of the klippa, of the animal soul, which is automatically dispelled. Yes, this happens. The animal soul is always automatically dispelled by the godly soul. This only works in those three garments, is limited to divine souls, aforementioned three garments, only in thought, speech, and action does the divine soul, the Beinoni, dominate the animal soul. The animal soul is still there. It still exists, and the godly soul does not have power. It did not conquer the animal soul. But the essence and core, of the divine soul, we're in the 4th paragraph on page 11. But the essence and core of the divine soul does not dominate the essence and core of the animal soul deriving from the klippa. For in the Beinoni, the essence and core of the animal soul originating in klippa, which we explained at length, which is lodged in the left part of the heart, remains undisturbed. It's completely there. It's 100% still in the force. It still has its, it still exists. But when does this happen? Right? How can you know that it's still there? After prayer, when the burning love of God is no longer in a revealed state in the right part of his heart, as it was during prayer when the love glowed openly and was felt palpably there. So what happened? What was going on during prayer and after prayer? Continuing on page 12. What was going on during prayer? If the animal soul is there, if the animal soul is still completely what was going on during prayer? Why did it fall asleep? And here the Alter Rebbe introduces us to an important point, which is going to be important as we continue to learn about how do we become a Beinoni. During prayer, the Beinoni was tapping into the innate, natural love of God that we all have. Rather, the love after prayer was only on the inside. His heart is inlaid with hidden love, meaning that the love which is natural divine soul, not the revealed love born in meditation that the Beinoni experienced during the prayer, but in natural hidden love, as we discern in chapter 18, that in the heart of every Jew lies the hidden natural love of God. During prayer, what love? Sorry, I said that a little bit off. During prayer, what was he feeling? He revealed fully inflamed love of God. That flame was so bright that the animal soul went to sleep. But now what is he feeling? The inspiration is gone. The fiery flame is gone. What's left? Only the inborn natural love of God that we all have naturally, which will be discussed at length in chapter 18 and on, sort of, because this is going to be important when we discuss how do you have Mayach Shalat Alev, how do you have that control, which the Alter Rebbe is going to need to discuss and advise us. V'azai yachal liyos sichlus haksil hara b'izgalus liba b'chalas mali. Then, after prayer, when the love of God is no longer revealed in the heart of the Beinoni, it is possible for the folly of the wicked fool to reveal itself in the left part of the heart. While we're praying, the brightness completely overshines the dark. But when we're not praying, the light is not so bright anymore. It's bright enough to control our actions, but not our emotions.
So prayer is really thought and speech. Mitzvahs is action. So are mitzvahs above prayer? If a Jew, to be a good Jew, but you had to choose sometimes?
So I believe that with the conversation we're having is a little bit different to what we're having now, because we were talking about our state of mind while we're praying, right? Our state of mind while we're praying, which yes, is an intellectual and speech thing primarily. Besides for that, we're also talking about our control over our animal soul, which applies in thought, speech, and action. Speech and thought are not only limited to prayer. I can have bad thoughts and I can say bad things. But my choice, if I'm talking about someone else, I have a choice. Do I say something positive or something negative? Do I gossip about them or do I praise them? That's a choice. Do I listen to my animal soul or to my godly soul? Now, whereas to which is above, prayer or mitzvos, we discussed it a little bit in the previous chapters 3, 4, etc. But in general, it depends what time it is. If right now is the time for prayer, now is the time for prayer. But prayer is also limited to 3 times a day, or tehillim, or sort of that kind of prayer. Through most of the day, I'm supposed to be doing mitzvos, because mitzvos connect us on an action level, which means it comes down into a deeper reality, right? Prayer, I could pray a lot. I'm not changing anything. I'm just speaking. By doing a mitzvah, I'm changing the physical object to become holy. That's a little bit more of a different conversation than one we're having now. I don't want to go. There's quite a bit left to talk about. So do we have like 10 more minutes, or do people have to go? I don't. No? Okay. I think we'll finish this because
I say yes.
Okay. So we'll finish up the thought. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. After prayer, the godly soul is only able to control thought, speech, and action, not the emotional level. And because of that, emotionally, the Beinoni still desires all of these other things. Lis aves tavis, middle of page 12. Lis aves tavis kolin yoni gashmis elam haza heim beheter heim beiser chas v'shalom. Craving all physical matters of this world, whether permitted, except they should be desired as a means of serving God, whereas this time the Beinoni craves them for his own sake, as we discussed. The animal soul can also want permitted things. The question is, why do you want it? The same cup of coffee could be the desire of the animal soul and the godly soul for different reasons. Or whether prohibited, God forbid, as though he never prayed. After prayer, all the desires are back. The Beinonis, once again, emotionally feeling the presence of the animal soul, because suddenly it wants everything. However, here's the distinction. Ella, as though he never prayed. His craving is limited, that in the case of a craving of a prohibited matter, it does not enter his mind to transgress an actual practice, God forbid. He's not actually thinking about doing it, he's just tempted to do it.
He's what?
Tempted to do it. He's not actually, once we start planning, once we start scheming in our mind, someone who's limited on what they can eat, it's okay for them to start thinking about, if I were to want to have this, what type of pizza would I get? What type of cake would I get? In the animals, the Beinoni doesn't even have those thoughts. Never actually starts planning how it would sin, because that's already sinning in his mind. Not actually sinning, but actually, feeling the sin in his mind. The bottom of page 12, but the thought of sin, which in certain aspects, as explained in the previous chapter, more heinous than actual sin, can manage to rise from his mind and distract him from Torah and divine service. He doesn't plan, he doesn't think about actually sinning, but the thoughts, the temptations manage to get through. Continuing on page 13, as the sages say, there are 3 sins that are so difficult to avoid that no man is safe from transgressing daily. They are thoughts of sin, lack of concentration in prayer, and slanderous gossip. Thus, the Beinoni is included in the generalization of no man avoids a sin. There are some things that are so just in part of our day, just every person slips up in these 3 things. Thoughts of sin. The temptation to sin affects us. That's us as a Beinoni, just something that's going to happen. There's no way of avoiding those temptations because our animal soul is still alive and well. And therefore I still feel those temptations. However, I have a secret weapon. I, the Beinoni, have the ability to not let the temptation overpower. How? Because my mind controls my thoughts. Where do I get that? A daily recalibration. That emotion that I felt during prayer, that extreme powerful, I might not be on that level anymore, but the effects are still here. That's why I mentioned to David, sometimes we have to pray. We have to have the same thing by Mincha. Sometimes I may have to pull out a Tehillim to recalibrate in the middle of the day as well. However, the impression retained on his mind from his meditation during prayer on God's greatness and the natural love and fear of God hidden in the right part of his heart enables him prevail over and dominate the evil animal soul's craving, preventing the evil from gaining the supremacy and dominion over the city and carrying out its craving from the potential to the actual by clothing itself in the organs of the body in actual speech and deed. The animal soul is strong enough to tempt me, but not strong enough to actually overpower me. Why? Because I'm a Beinoni. I'm saying this in the more esoteric. I want it on the Beinoni says, I am a Beinoni. This morning, that prayer that I had, that recalibration, still has a lasting impact. Yes, I feel a temptation, but I would never actually let it go anywhere. Definitely not in speech and deed. But also, I feel furthermore, even in the mind alone, with respect to sinful thought, the evil has not the dominion and power to cause him, God forbid, to think such thoughts consciously. To cause the mind to accept willingly, God forbid, the evil thought that arises of its own accord from the heart to its mind, as explained above. Yes, we will feel the temptation. The Beinoni will be tempted. He'll have that thought, man, I could really use robbing a bank right now. But that's where it ends. He'll never consciously, willingly dwell on that thought. He'll never allow that thought to fester. It comes up, but he pushes it away right away. Yes, the temptation is there, but that's where it ends, the temptation. He never actually gives in thought, speech, or action. Page 14. Instead, immediately upon the thoughts rising to his mind, he, the Beinoni, thrusts it aside with both hands and he divorces his mind from it The instant he realizes that it's an evil thought, he pushes it away. He will refuse to accept it even as a subject for more conscious thought, and will certainly not entertain the notion of acting on it, God forbid, or even speaking on it. For he who willingly indulges in such thoughts, is deemed a rasha in that moment. Right? Because again, the moment the animal soul has control over my mind, it has control. I'm a rasha if the animal soul has control. So I might have the thought, but I never think the thought. It might rise up, but I push it away right away. And the Alter Rebbe in this I don't know if you noticed this, in this chapter is being very, very repetitive. Because it's important for us to realize the extent to which the Beinoni does have control and doesn't have control. Because it's a very fine line. Because it has control, thought, speech, and action. Does that mean I'll never have a negative thought? No. I'll have the temptation. The thought will rise up, but I'll push it away right away. I'll never willingly dwell on it. I'll never allow the thought to percolate, to fester.
So, I'm sure I've been a rasha before.
As we all have.
And so how hard was it for me to get to be a bad?
Very, very hard. And this is where it's important to not sugar and not think that this is something that it's very easy. Because for the next few chapters, the Alter Rebbe is going to discuss how can we possibly get this control.
So I'm totally a rasha, then I have to come.
So totally a rasha is an extreme. Yeah. Because totally a rasha, as we discussed in chapter 11,
right,
total a rasha means your godly soul is completely out to lunch.
Okay, so a little, but
yes,
but we need to get back.
Yes.
So, what do we do?
We continue coming to these classes, but the Alter Rebbe is going to tell us.
Okay.
Right now, the Alter Rebbe is telling us what is a Beinoni. Who the Beinoni is someone who has complete control, thought, speech, and action. Now, I want to be very clear. It is possible that for a few minutes we achieve that level. It is possible that right now we're all sitting around. I mean, I hope no one's actively sinning right now. It is possible. But that's more by default. A Beinoni is someone who is powerful enough that even when the default goes away, when I go out into the big bad world and suddenly the temptations actually come up, suddenly I'm actually tempted, the Beinoni has the power to say no. And so when we talk about which land are you in right now? Are you in rasha land? Are you in Beinoni land? We might even think to ourselves that right now I am in Beinoni land because I'm not actively sinning. I'm in complete control of my thought, speech, and action. The problem is I'm only there by default. I'm not actually there if right now someone brought out a temptation, if right now someone called me up and said, hey, do you want to rob a bank with me? I'd be there instantly, even just mentally, right? Which means that right now, which land am I actually in? By default, I'm right on the edge because by default, I'm in Beinoni land. But in actuality, if a temptation actually rose up, I'd be gone. And so that's where it's very, being a Beinoni is not just about what I'm actually doing, it's a state of mind. And that's why earlier in the chapter, the Alter Rebbe stressed it's important to remember that a Beinoni, the way he is right now, he's so in control, he will never sin and he would have never sinned. Because he's actually so in control, not just by default, but...
So then are you back?
So it's a battle, right? It's really a struggle for us to fight, to not only be a good by default, but be a good by willpower, to be a Beinoni that even if, right, I mean, we can all think to ourselves, if someone brought out something right now, if somebody gave me an offer to do something wrong, and all of us have our own temptations that would fail us, would I fail or not? Am I right now, I'm learning Tanya, I'm inspired. Right now I feel like I would never sin. I would never give in to we just called it foolish and wicked and horrible. I would never actually sin. Is that true? Is that actually true? I have $1 million for anyone who goes right now and, robs the bank. Are you tempted? Would you think about it? If so, are you really a Beinoni? Because a Beinoni is someone who is so much in control, he will never sin and he would have never sinned. Not just by default, because right now he happens not to be tempted. And that's why being a Beinoni is not easy. It might be simple, It's very simple to say, you're in complete control. But it's absolutely not easy. And the Alter Rebbe spend the next few chapters talking about how do you drum up that self-control? How do you get to that point? What can you tap into? Because a Beinoni is never wicked, even for a single moment. Now, the Alter Rebbe is going to finish off by just talking about how this complete control is not only talking about between us and God. When we talk about a Beinoni in complete control, it also talks about between interhuman relationships. A Beinoni is someone who's so control, even emotions like jealousy, anger, bearing a grudge, those are emotions. You can have control over it. We'll read through this a little bit quicker because I don't want to go too far over time.
You can't control them until you have them.
Well,
you have to be aware.
Absolutely.
That you're jealous.
A Beinoni would feel that. A Beinoni, someone does something wrong to a Beinoni. And we're not talking about safety issues. If someone's abusing someone else, if someone's in danger, if someone's being an actual thing, then of course you stand up for yourself. But somebody did something wrong. Right now you have a choice. Do you want to feel angry at them or not? That's an emotional choice. A Beinoni who's in complete control over his emotions can choose not to. Continuing on page 14, so too in matters between man and his fellow man. As soon as there rises from a heart to his mind any animosity or hatred, God forbid, or jealousy, anger, or grudge, or the like. Page 15, he will bar them from his mind and will, refusing to even think about it. On the contrary, his mind will prevail over and dominate the feelings of his heart to do the exact opposite of the heart desires, namely to connect himself with a fellow with a quality of kindness. To display love to his fellow, disproportionate love in suffering from him to the further from the furthest extreme, without being provoked into anger, God forbid, or take revenge in kind, God forbid, even without anger. But on the contrary, to repay offenders with favors. It's taught in the Zohar that we should learn from the example of Yosef with his brothers, in his conduct with his brothers. Joseph was the epitome of this person. He had all the right in the world to be mad at his brothers. But, as someone who had gotten control over his emotions, anger, jealousy, hatred, wanting to have revenge, bearing a grudge, all of those are emotions. The Beinoni, which is Mayach Shalat HaHalev, his mind controls over his emotions. He can train himself not to feel those. And in fact, not only, but someone can do the worst things to you, and you have within you the ability to not only not feel bad about it, not only not feel anger, but to extend kindness to them. Because kindness versus anger versus emotions, again, we're not talking about an occasion where that's harming to you or harming to them, or where it's enabling behavior. There's a lot of, obviously, caveats to this.
To feel kindness is
It's an emotion.
Yes. Where is forgiveness?
There as well. All of those are emotions. It is different. I mean, in order to be able to give kindness to someone who went against you, who hurt you, you have to forgive them.
Okay.
We're not just talking about acting kindly, but feeling kind.
Yeah.
Those are emotions. Those are expressions of, right? You can feel someone does something bad to you, right? Somebody embarrasses you in public. That initial thought of, wow, I'm so upset at them, that's human. But do you act on that? Do you actually feel that way? Do you allow those thoughts of hatred and maybe talking bad about them or maybe acting out against them? No. You're a Beinoni. You have complete control over your thought, speech, and action, and therefore, you don't act upon it. And in fact, you're even able to act the opposite. Someone did something bad to you, you can repay them with kindness. Why? Because your mind, your intellect is in control. And just like Yosef was able to, even though he had all the reason to be emotionally upset at his brothers, mentally, he was able to remember, God is in control, not my brothers, and he completely forgave them and even acted to them with kindness.
He may have taken a little revenge, don't you think?
In which way?
When the brothers were in front of him.
So that is a good point, and so we're getting into a little bit of a thing.
And revenge isn't necessarily bad, right?
So
he asked God to seek revenge when people hurt the Jews.
Revenge is bad.
Revenge, the commentaries talk about the fact that Yosef played all these tricks on his brothers and tormented them a little bit. ultimately, the commentaries explained that he was setting them up for a test. It wasn't revenge for the sake of that they had hurt him, so he wanted to hurt them back. He was trying to put them back in that position to make sure that they had repented and that they were bad, because now they were once again faced with the choice of save Binyamin or put themselves in danger. Last time they had failed and sent Joseph to slavery. Now the choice was back up again, and he saw and he heard that they had fully repented, but that was more about them than himself. For himself, he had fully forgiven them, and he was ready to move on and repay them with kindness and honor and respect. And even after Jacob passed away, it says that at that point the brothers got nervous again. Maybe Joseph was just being nice to us in deference to our father. But Joseph said, absolutely not. We're 100% okay. I forgive you fully. Where did he get that ability from? Mind over emotion. Mayach shal halev, as we will continue, God willing, to discuss next week.